Your question dealt with the change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about, what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't think. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that. I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image. Born near the start of the Roaring '20s, Ernest Columbus Withers was one of 6 children. His mother died when he was 6, and his father became the foundation of his upbringing. The relationship between he and his father would always be challenging. When Ernest was in the 8th grade, his sister bought her boyfriend a Brownie camera that ended up launching his career.
And her boyfriend didn't care about no camera. That was just another toy. And so he passed it off to her brother. And I was approaching the 9th grade. Being a little free-flowing young man, I got up in the back of the auditorium and walked to the front to make a picture of world heavyweight champion Joe Lewis's wife came to our school campus and was on the stage, and the children just laughed. After finishing high school, I went into the Army, and I was a company commander's Jeep driver, and the table organization called for a photographer, and this was my desire to be a picture taker.
Withers enlisted in the United States Army and served in the South Pacific during World War II. He was trained in the Army School of Photography, and after his military service, he and his brother opened a studio in North Memphis. His father thought he should become a mailman.
My father thought that I was a pretty foolish boy, that I would come out of the military instead of taking a job in the United States Post Office, where I possibly could have gotten a job because of him having worked in the post office, and I would have been just going to work and coming home, going to work and coming home. It still was a seed of individual ambition to be a photographer.
Withers was one of the first African Americans to become a Memphis police officer in 1948. Once again, his father didn't agree with his decision. He served as a policeman in spite of his father's disapproval. But after 3 years, it was clear to him his destiny was to be a photographer.
When the Memphis Police Department opened up its doors for the application of black men to be policemen, I went down there against his will and made an application, became a policeman. He didn't really want me to be there because he didn't have so much love for policemen. Once I came on the police department, I became a popular image as the picture taker that is a policeman, picture-taking policeman, picture-taking policeman. So I began to draw customers from throughout Memphis because I was a policeman. I had a situation where I was a policeman and doing photographs for Look magazine out of Houston, Texas. When the black people of Memphis struck the commercial appeal, the white photographers at the commercial appeal could not come to the black rallies because the black folk would run them away. So if they wanted any kind of picture, they had to get it from me. Time magazine was really interested in a newspaper strike in Memphis, and Louis Silvers, who was a writer for the Commercial Appeal and a stringer for Time magazine, asked me to provide him with a picture, and so I did. And then when I got too popular as a photographer and a policeman, then the police department got tired of my being a policeman, and the lieutenants were grouchy, and they soon made a way to kick me off the police department because I could not be used in their private gimmicks to frame and entrap bootleggers on the weekend and things the way you need an undercover policeman to do.
Because you were too popular.
I was too popular. Everybody knew me. A greater percentage of people knew me, and when I moved in the Walker home down there in West Junction, where all the Cone whiskey maker was, some of them guys saw me in them cabs and this old guy, police, he just coming down here to snoop on us. But he didn't know I was down there to live, and I wasn't no police no more. But these were the images that you have to outlive.
In 1951, Chicago Defender publisher John H. Singstad began publishing the Tri-State Defender in Memphis. Ernest Withers was recruited by the newspaper's editor to be the photographer, and he began a journey through history that would take him a lifetime to complete.
My interest out of Memphis led me into Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, in behalf of the Defender publications. The Bible for the black people in the South was the Chicago Defender. Arden Carter, a newspaper publisher out of Greenwood, Mississippi, said that the white people in the Delta read the commercial appeal like it was the Bible, and when they died, they wanted to be buried in the Peabody Hotel. So, which means that if they read the white paper like that, then black people, same thing. I went to Chicago and I had a friend. I said, I sure want to see one of them Chicago Defenders. He said, man, I don't read that Chicago Defender. They so busy defending the people in the South, and we up here in Chicago, we're a little free. And if I read that Chicago Defender, I go out on the street and start slapping white folk. That, you know, he had been converted to an acceptability within the city of Chicago where the people in the South were still dependent on the thirst of reading black publications.
The strength of the black press continued to grow throughout the 1950s and 60s, and Withers became a key figure in documenting this time in history. He accepted the physical risk associated with being on the front line of the civil rights struggle, and much like a war correspondent, he always carried out his assignment. In 1955, photographs of a Chicago teenager, Emmett Till, who was lynched while visiting relatives in Money, Mississippi, for allegedly whistling at a white woman, made the front page of the Chicago Defender and newspapers across the nation. His photographs sparked a nationwide cry for justice, even though the compensation for his services left much to be desired.
John Simstack told Mr. Wilson after I worked a week at the Emmett Till trial that my salary was $35. Man, that was $35 for working 7 days in Mississippi. The white folks pointing at you.
Ernest Withers was in Montgomery, Alabama in 1956 when the celebrated bus boycott ended, and he captured Dr. Martin Luther King and other boycott supporters as they rode the integrated bus. He would be with Dr. King for many years after this occasion and documented his life until it ended in Memphis in 1968.
Martin King Abernathy and a group of black and white from the National Council of Churches, Dr. Smiley and some other members, rode the bus with they were more strong because they were more Northerners and they were more in favor of desegregation, and they kind of let the people of Montgomery know that this is true. You can ride. And of course we got on there was a white man got on there and stood there, and I was just photographing on that bus. He used to come up to me and say, boy, you better be damn glad you ain't taking my picture. Do that damn thing. You got to be tore up. And he just laughing, you know. They thought he was joke with me, but he's telling me.
He was telling you the truth.
He's telling me the truth that if I take his picture, what he was going to do for me. After Martin Luther King had been assassinated in Memphis, I had the opportunity, having been a policeman, to go into Lewis's film home. I knew the lay of Lewis's film home. I went into the morgue where Martin Luther King lay there with his head cut wide open, where they had cut it open to take his brain out in the autopsy. I put his skull in my hand and put it back in his head and pushed his skin far back, etc. And only a few months ago, maybe a year and a half or so ago, I'd never realized, but Reverend Kyle said he thought that it was remarkable that I did not take the liberty as a photographer to take pictures of Martin Luther King, which was not fair to anybody to have seen him, but I'd never, that was my personal feeling that I was suffering the death of Martin Luther King.
Withers' journey didn't always involve danger and risk. Sometimes his assignments were comical, even if they had strong racial overtones.
Overton Park was in the white community. Overton Park, a prime white community. Overton meant white. Overton meant East Memphis. And African-American People's Zoo was there, and they had a right to go to the zoo, so they set aside, so we'll let them go one day a week. That's Tuesday. And of course, on the day that it was the Negro Day, and being in the white community, they would put that sign out there. There wasn't no advertising, y'all can't come. But when they came that day, they had that big sign at every gate, no white people allowed in the zoo today.
Throughout his career, Withers chronicled the music industry in Memphis, from the father of the blues, W.C. Handy, to rhythm and blues Black Moses, Isaac Hayes. His pictures crossed both racial and cultural lines, and Withers not only took photos of popular recording artists, he also knew the inside scoop.
Elvis Presley came to the Goodwill Review at the City Auditorium. Elvis Presley visited Negro clubs in the Beale Street community, in that the hotel Men's Improvement Club, which had became the Flamingo Club, was owned by Clifford Miller. Elvis Presley came not only to Beale Street for music, but he came to Beale Street to get barbecue. Culpepper was a great barbecue man, and he would tell some white fellas, the white press, I'm going down to Mr. Culpepper to get me some barbecue. And the white press would say, well, you call him Mr. He's just a colored man. He said, I call him Mr. because he is Mr. Culpepper. Aretha Franklin and Sam Cooke were Sunday school kids at the same church that her father pastored. And then as they began to emerge to go high as entertainment people, they still kind of interacted. It was, as some people always give you a behind-the-scenes story, that they were boyfriend, girlfriend. I never knew that authentically, but because they went their separate ways. And it was Willie Mitchell who took a country boy in Al Green out of Arkansas, brought him over here, kept him a year or two, just letting him watch the Memphis social music scene before he really launched Al Green. I mean, he used to kind of touch fellas to kind of soften them up. Don't be so hard on him. Because he saw the great talent in him.
Right, absolutely.
Bobby Blue Bland was in the same group with Johnny Ace, and Johnny Ace, playing Russian roulette in Texas, shot himself during the Christmas. And they had to pick someone from Memphis in the same mold to fill his position, and they picked Bobby Bland. And Bobby Bland was a total different trend, but he came out of the same Billy Duncan band that they were all in.
Withers saw Beale Street change over the years from a segregated community to an integrated entertainment center. He documented the changes for future generations to see.
Beale Street was always, in the back days, owned by the Italians and Jews, policed by the Irish, and guarded by the Negroes. Now, You have Negroes in Memphis, Tennessee, and whites that intermingle on Beale Street, and we have very little disturbance of differences. Even the growth of Elvis Presley did something to usurp part of the overall anger that we had as a separate people. The growth, as the man Philip says, of rock and roll, the advent of the Stax musicians, and all of these things are the ingredients for the big change in Memphis. Every move you can make can't be an angry move, where during the Civil Rights Movement, anytime you made a different move, you made an anger move. But now you make an intellectual argument where people get in the closets and iron out and thrust out their confusions.
On October 15, 2007, Ernest Withers completed his assignments here on this earth. He died in his hometown of Memphis at the age of 85. Thousands mourned his death. He left photographs covering nearly 60 years of history, and his work continues to educate the world. In 2010, 3 years after his death, the Memphis Commercial Appeal newspaper published an article accusing Ernest Withers of being an FBI informant in the years 1968 to 1970. The story connected Withers' name to an assigned informant number only secret FBI files could verify. At the end of the lengthy newspaper article, the story concluded that the claims associated with the informant number attributed to Mr. Withers was, quote, unclear based on congressional records. All FBI agents and personnel who could have shed light on the accusations had died prior to the article's publication. Because of the known hatred late FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover had for Dr. King and anyone associated with the civil rights movement, the story and accusations have done nothing to tarnish the image and historical significance of Dr. Ernest C. Withers' life's work. If anything, because the accusations were presented only after his death, the story may serve to immortalize his memory.
Everybody got to be their own quarterback. They have got to learn to call the signals of living themselves. I didn't exactly want to be exactly like my daddy. I wanted to be like the man that I saw taking pictures at school, you know. Instead, my father wanted me to be in the post office as a letter carrier, but I thought that if this man was coming to my school taking pictures and making a living, then I ought to be able to do that. Is that all right, Daddy? Well, if that's what you want to do, but I don't think that's what I'd like for you to do. When you are fibrally trained very strongly as a young person, yeah, you get a little older, but there are some things that the ethics of your family, of your pride of your family and your father, that you just don't drop totally. But yet you do not live perfectly like he, she, or mama or daddy wants you to live, but you live a little bit better, a little bit different from them, but you don't stray too far away from the morality of the hope of your father and mother.
In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.